Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this seminar to celebrate the launch of the latest China playbook, Beyond the Frontier Guidebook for UK FinTechs to Enter China, brought to us by Deloitte and DIT China. And this morning's session also brought to you by Innovate Finance as well. My name is Peter Cunnane. I am the National and International Strategy Lead here at Innovate Finance. And I'll be introducing our speakers this morning. Just before I do, however, just to quickly run through the agenda, we'll be hearing in a moment from our three speakers, after which we will have a panel session to discuss the guidebook and to answer any questions that you may have. We'll be opening the Q&A in a few minutes' time to receive your questions. So while you're listening to our speakers, if you have question, please do pop that into there when that opens and think about what your question may be, and we'd be very happy to answer those. I'm delighted to introduce this morning in reverse order our speakers. We're joined by Louise Brett, Senior Partner and Head of FinTech at Deloitte. Louise leads the UK response to Deloitte, working across the ecosystem with financial services, government bodies, regulators, advisors, and the broader FinTech community, and is active in applying disruptive innovation principles to client challenges and Deloitte's own business models. We're also joined by Charlotte Crosswell, who's the CEO of Innovate Finance. Charlotte is represents the industry body, leads the industry body representing the UK FinTech sector. Prior to joining Innovate Finance, Charlotte spent the majority of her financial services career in market infrastructure roles and held a number of management positions at NASDAQ and the London Stock Exchange. And we're also joined, and you'll hear first from Stephen Barron, who's the Minister, Counsellor and Sector Director for Financial Professional Services, DIT China, where he's been since May 2020, prior to which he was a Financial Services Specialist and Deputy Director in the DIT China team. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you're located. It's my great pleasure to join today the launch of our guidebook for UK FinTechs to enter the Chinese market. As Peter said, today's event is jointly hosted by the Department for International Trade, Deloitte, and Innovate Finance. I also want to express my thanks to Charlotte Crosswell, Louise Brett, and all of the other speakers for joining today's launch. If I may borrow from the opening lines of the recently published Philippa report to start, FinTech is not a niche within financial services, nor is it a subsector. It's a permanent technological revolution that is changing the way we do finance. And nowhere is this more apparent than in both the Chinese and UK markets. From developments in auto enrollment in the UK to electronic payments in China, both countries are forging ahead when it comes to developing unique and rapidly growing FinTech markets. China's market, it goes without saying, is huge and growing rapidly as financial services become increasingly available to consumers and individuals and corporates increase their engagement with financial markets. An estimated 87% of Chinese consumers are now using FinTech services. The size, scale, and growth of the market here, combined with the increased access for foreign firms, creates a huge opportunity for UK FinTechs that are looking to expand internationally. That said, the market here can be a daunting one for companies, whether large or small, to explore. There's also a lot of conflicting and sometimes misleading information out there on China and how firms can address the market here. It was with all of this in mind, we thought to develop the guidebook to help UK FinTechs to both better understand the Chinese market and the process to enter the market should they decide to do so. Whilst obviously we believe the market here presents a huge opportunity for UK firms, we're also conscious that the Chinese market isn't one that will be for everyone. However, for those that decide it is a market that they want to explore, I want to stress that Her Majesty's government, and in particular, the Department for International Trade, are here to support you every step of the way, from initial market exploration through to setup, and then helping you to expand and grow your business here. We realize that this guidebook won't answer all of your questions, and we very much view this as a starting point for a conversation. We intend to hold a series of online seminars to help further introduce the market environment here, and also to share previous UK FinTechs experience of setting up and conducting business in China. For any groups that want to learn more about the market, please do get in touch with the team over here to have a discussion on the latest market developments and how we may be able to support your business to enter and to grow in China. Just to plug, the team's contacts are in the guidebook, so please do get in touch. And we're also looking at putting an event together around FinTech Week in April. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone for joining today, from the speakers to those companies joining who are interested in hearing more about the market. I'd especially like to thank both the Deloitte team and the DIT China's FinTech team for all the hard work in developing the guidebook. And want to again stress, please do not hesitate to get in touch with the team for a conversation on the market here and how we may be able to help support you to grow and enter into the Chinese market. We're very much here to be used and abused. And I would just end by saying, I hope you all find the guidebook very useful and look forward to speaking with many of you in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. And a reminder to all, we've also posted a link to the guidebook in the chat function on this Zoom call. Now I'd like to hand it over to my CEO, Charlotte Crosswell of Innovate Finance. Charlotte.
Thank you, Peter, and great to work with DIT and Deloitte on this. And thank you for all the support on this. Many people don't know that actually I used to spend an awful lot of time in mainland China. So I was there for a week or two a month for many years. So particular interest in this one. But I think it's changed a little bit since I was there in the early 2000s. So for those of you who don't know, Innovate Finance, as Peter said, is the UK industry body for FinTech. What that means is we represent members across the ecosystem, from the smallest FinTech just starting up to the highest growth names that everyone knows and sees from the UK, but also overseas companies, and very much bringing that voice together. As everyone knows, the FinTech is one word. It represents a lot of different things to many different people, whether that's innovation in financial services from the banks that we work with, asset managers and insurers, to FinTechs that may be RegTech, it may be payments, it may be challenger banks, it may be people helping on financial inclusion. But it may also be helping on technology solutions to help those banks there. So the consumer brands that everyone knows, definitely are around the Innovate Finance table, but there's this huge ecosystem across the whole of the UK, up and down the country in various different clusters, looking to the next evolution of financial services. So we do a lot of the policy work around that, trying to bring that voice of the sector there, but we also support a lot on the investment side. Incredible interest from investment into UK FinTech that continues to grow. So just in last year, despite crisis, and if you think of the first 6 months of the year was quite slow on investment, simply because people hadn't quite worked out how to close deals by Zoom, we actually saw an uptick for the second half of the year. So just over $4 billion came into UK FinTech, and about half of that was from overseas investors looking to the UK market for those growth opportunities. A lot of those see those growth opportunities coming from international expansion. Obviously, the UK market is still quite small, but the global market for the innovation in financial services is significant, and that's certainly why we are more than happy to be here today. I think when we look at that expansion, whether that's domestically, whether it's internationally, there's just an incredible opportunity now. If we think of our work, we deal across the whole of the world in FinTech hubs, global financial hubs, and whether that's in developed markets and whether it's in developing markets, maybe ones that have started from technology and telecoms to bring financial services and a digital ID to people that then give them a credit record and eventually a bank account, to others that are driving through from global investment banks, building out their own digital banks and really responding to the demand from consumers and businesses across the world for a better and more efficient interaction with financial services. So those relationships go from anything from China to throughout the whole of Asia, down to Australia, where we've seen a real explosion of FinTech, but obviously into US markets as well. And particularly encouraged by some of the growth we're seeing in South America, where it's up to 60% in some countries do not have a bank account, and are looking around the world for those growth opportunities and for people to come in to that market and find a different way to interface. So this isn't just about financial services innovating. This is actually looking at global innovation that then gives out opportunities into FinTech. And we certainly are looking at the opportunities in China that has really driven that through tech and data to see that growth. And I know that many of the UK FinTech companies are interested in the opportunities for them. Many people will know that we have just published the Khalifa review of UK FinTech, which was run by Ron Khalifa, who was CEO of WorldPay, so knows the global payment system extremely well. We were delighted to provide co-secretariat for that review, which was just published on Friday, and quickly followed up by the Hill review, which has been looking at listings into the UK as well. What that review has done is really put back UK FinTech onto the global stage. Everyone knew what was happening, everyone saw the growth there, but being able to take that review and look at the capital opportunities, the national opportunities up and down the UK, skills and talent and what's needed to grow UK FinTech, looking at our international competitiveness and attractiveness, and also importantly, looking at the regulatory and policy arena and what needs to be done to develop our sandboxes to the next level. And I was personally delighted to see a scale box named in that report, really reflecting the nature of UK FinTech and where that's taking place, and helping these companies as they go from a small FinTech startup all the way through to a global brand. So some incredible opportunities there. We certainly see the importance of the UK FinTech bridges, and delighted to work with our peers in China to see how we can develop those over the next few years. Again, those came up all the time in the review, and I think people were very keen to see what we could do to develop those further, and really looking at that international support that can be given either on the ground in China or from the UK, developing out those relationships. So we certainly see the opportunities for FinTech in China are obviously significant. The market is such a size, we can only be jealous of that in the UK with just our 65 million plus people. But certainly we are a land of innovation, incubation and scaling, and that opportunity is definitely now there. So therefore, we really welcome the launch of this guidebook today. It's going to go a long way to providing our businesses with that infrastructure and support they will need, that we reflected in the Khalifa review. We recognise any entry to any overseas market around the world, especially when some companies are scaling at pace across many markets, can be a bumpy road for any business. So we're really encouraged by UK government by doing what they can to provide that guidance for our businesses with initiatives such as this. We constantly are reminded that from our members that entry into any new market requires maximum preparation and effort, and then that can really help success. And with a market size of China, rewards for those businesses, as I said, can be quite vast. We want to certainly encourage any Chinese businesses and investors attending today's session to consider the UK as a significant marketplace as well, and to develop those links there. We believe that there's an incredible opportunity coming forward, looking at links between the UK, between China, and seeing how we develop those, both for Chinese banks to learn from the innovation taking place into the UK, and from our innovation services taking them out to China. So thank you for letting me speak today. Thank you again to those who are involved. Thank you to Deloitte and the DIT team. It's just fantastic to work with such a strong ecosystem and that can be linked up just on a matter of a small screen to take some of these discussions forward. Thank you, Peter, back to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I'll hand straight over to Louise Brett at Deloitte. Louise, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning and good afternoon. It is my privilege to be on this screen with my friends from both China and London, UK, to talk about the guidebook. Not only do I lead FinTech for Deloitte, I also am the chair of our China desk in the UK, recognising the importance of the axis between UK and China. Now, we've talked about, Stephen has talked about, as has Charlotte, the massive growth opportunities that China presents, the opening up of China to make it what is very high reward, but also highly complex when you embark on a journey out to that part of the world, and with your business, understand the opportunities available to you. So it was with delight that we were asked by Department of International Trade to work with them on this guidebook, both with our teams, both teams in London, but also our teams in China, working together and across the ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, we have engaged with over 40 FinTech professionals, CEOs of FinTechs that have embarked on this journey or are thinking of going through this journey, through the M&A deal makers, through tax and legal professionals, and our regulatory specialists, to get a very rounded view of what does this mean to thrive on a journey into China as a UK FinTech. But as Charlotte mentioned, we want the flow, obviously, as a country to be both ways. And I'm delighted that my colleague David Percival chairs the Manchester China Forum, which, when I reflect on the FSR, the FinTech Strategic Review, or the Khalifa Review as it's now called, what we were contributing on national connectivity, the chapter about how do you elevate the fantastic FinTech, high growth FinTech that we have in the UK and understand it where it is. And one of the 10 high growth clusters was indeed, we called it the Pennines, that axis between Manchester and Leeds. And so it's interesting that in Manchester, outside of the London well-known super hub for FinTech, we have this fantastic axis already with China. And the China Forum has indeed overseen 6 billion of direct inward investment coming into Manchester across all sectors. And this guide is about how do we tap into what's already happening and go again. So I wanted to thank all my colleagues and the colleagues in DIT and beyond for making this guidebook come to life. It is 60 pages, it's practical, it brings to life stories, it has insights from companies that have already made that journey or are thinking about that journey. It has lessons learned. It's highly engaging as a guidebook, and I'm really proud of what the team collectively has brought to life. However, the journey's not going to stop there. It's very much going to be about how do you engage beyond the chapters, beyond the 5 steps that we call out. The first one being market research. Understand the market you're looking at. How do you get that research? How do you get that data at your fingertips and use the services that the Department for International Trade, that Innovate Finance, that Deloitte and others can provide in understanding what your ambition is going to look like when it comes to life. The second is entry strategy. So what is the entry strategy you're going to pursue? What are the regulatory considerations that are now and moving? We've heard about the movement within China to open up. So this isn't a static picture. This is where we come together as a network to understand what is happening. Then who should you partner with? When we get into the body of the report, we talk about partnering strategies and how to make success of landing in China as a FinTech. What should your business setup be? What are the tax and legal considerations that you need to have front of mind as you make these strategic choices? And finally, probably the most exciting bit is how do you scale? With a market that's going to see a middle class grow from 300 million to 600 million by 2028, scaling is a phenomenal opportunity. So how do you, as a UK FinTech looking to that opportunity, make that journey? So I'm going to just conclude by thanking again the team that's pulled this together, but also making that open invitation that both Stephen and Charlotte did to engage with us around your journeys. We're all looking forward to your success. And I'll hand back to Peter, and you'll hear from the real experienced professionals in the next part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. And I want to thank our 3 speakers this morning, Louise, Charlotte, Stephen. Thank you very much for opening the event today. If I could kindly ask the 3 of you to go off camera while I bring on our panelists, led expertly by Raymond Zhu, who is the head of China desk at Deloitte. If the panelists could pop on their cameras, please. And Raymond, thank you. Raymond, I'll turn over to you. It's been a pleasure working with you, Raymond, on this project, and over to you.
Thanks, Peter. I would like to invite the panelists to show themselves. Yeah, good. Hello, this is Raymond. I'm the head of China desk from Deloitte Consulting and the lead author of this guidebook. Together with me are 5 distinctive panelists who were involved in shaping the guidebook, together with 10 UK national and international FinTechs, and the 30 experts ranging from legal, tax, M&A, and regulatory domains. as Louise mentioned, it is our wish to make this guidebook as practical as possible. Let me introduce the panelists first. Philippa, FinTech Bridge Advisor from DIT. Many of you will have already met with her. Philippa has an interesting career ranging from financial service through entrepreneurship, innovation, and global business BD to consulting on strategy and international trade and investments. She will bring more sort of holistic UK-China perspectives to today's discussion. Followed by Chi, Head of the UK-China Corridor at eBri, a distinctive FinTech focused on helping businesses growing faster by financing trade. Being a native Chinese and an ex-trader, she combined those experience and expertise and built a new business ground up, focused on China market, and is growing it super fast. She will bring the hands-on experience in sort of building up the business. William, a seasoned financial service and China expert with a very long CV, I have to say. He is now the head of Greater China Strategy and Sales at FNZ, a renowned wealth tech. Having had executive experience in the UK and been living in Hong Kong for 13 years, his experience of leading FNZ's China expansion and the unique perspectives of the sort of FinTech entry strategy into China and practical areas for C-suite considerations will be very valuable for the audience today. Lily, a key author of the guidebook. Lily was admitted to the PRC bar and the New York State Bar, and is also a PRC certified tax agent. She has over 16 years of legal advisory experience advising state-owned enterprises, domestic and overseas listed companies, as well as the startups and FinTechs on a spectrum of legal matters. She's also a London School Economics alumna. Last but not least, based in Shenzhen, Jingyuan, a PRC qualified lawyer from Simons & Simons. Jingyuan specializes in legal advisory focusing on TMT cross-border investment and data protection. She's also an LSE alumna. That's our distinct panelists. As Louise mentioned, in the guidebook, we set out the 5 steps. And so I would like to sort of set the flow of this discussion as if a UK FinTech CEO who's going through the 5 steps as he or she expand and grow into China. Start with a sort of market overview. We know that UK FinTechs are renowned for their innovation, agility, and ambition. And at the same time, China market is big, huge demand, tech-savvy consumers, and the government awareness to open up the foreign players. So Philippa, from a DIT's point of view, you obviously occupy lots of information. What's your observation there? Do you think the climate is ready? And have you seen some success stories for UK FinTechs to step into China?
Thanks, Raymond. Yes, absolutely. And as you say, a lot of opportunity, but also quite a complex environment. And particularly when we look at policy and regulation in China, it's much more multi-stakeholder, it's much more complex than a lot of FinTechs are used to in the UK. And it's also rapidly changing. So we've seen increased openness over the last few years and a desire to enable overseas firms to come and operate in China. Many of you will remember things like the launch of the Hong Kong Shanghai Stock Connect as a means to get more investment into China. But we know for a number of years that overseas ownership, foreign ownership in China has been a challenge. And there have been a number of enabling reforms over the last couple of years, which I'll touch upon. You've also got to look at the national and the local authority regulatory and policy environment, because there are different environments at different levels, and getting into the right area in China can really be an enabler for business. Just looking at a couple of examples, so in 2018, market access for foreign payment institutions was liberalised by the PBOC, and that really has enabled a lot of businesses in an area where the UK is quite strong to start doing business in China. Charlotte mentioned obviously the Khalifa review and the Lord Hill review earlier, and listings is something that the Chinese market has been looking at quite closely, including the launch of the STAR market for science and innovation technology companies. And we've also seen actually at the beginning of this year, HSBC starting to take advantage of the removal of foreign ownership shareholding ratios for securities companies, so actually setting up the first FinTech subsidiary of its kind in China. So we're seeing more businesses going in. We've also seen successes from the likes of, obviously, Ebury and FNZ, who I'm delighted to share the panel with today, but FinTechs across the UK FinTech sector, so Greensill in the supply chain finance space, R5, Oak North, have all managed to make these initial steps into China. But they've all done it with, and I'm sure we'll hear more from Ebury and FNZ in a minute, this mindfulness of what the environment is and which of the perhaps FinTech hubs from Chengdu to Shenzhen to Shanghai and Beijing, they should really begin to engage with. So there is opportunity across the board, and the government's also invested in, I think, what the Guidebook calls the interconnected and enabling technologies. So things like AI, blockchain, cloud, facial recognition and biometrics, which have really created infrastructure for businesses to build upon. So I think Louise said at the beginning about sort of doing your research when you first go into the market. That's really important. And we are here to help you kind of navigate that complex policy and regulatory landscape.
Thanks, Philippa. Of course, whilst we have two distinctive FinTechs, one is trade finance, one specializing wealth tech. But as you said, the A2G enablers actually is welcoming all sorts of UK FinTechs entering China. And I would like to sort of switch the gear, focus on the sort of business side. Chi, you are a native Chinese, I am. I think it is true that to say, using a phrase of describing the journey of entering China might be something that with a danger that knowing enough to think you're right, but not enough to know that you're wrong. How did you start with your journey from a market research to know that you're right?
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for Raymond's introduction. So actually, I think it's my great pleasure to share our journey with you all. Actually, about 3 years ago, our data team did a very interesting analysis, and we found out our existing client books, roughly about 40 to 50 existing clients, has some type of relationship with China. Some of them may be import from China, and some of them may have their client base in China. And all of those are UK-based companies. And after we get these fundings, so we think that is a very good time we start China-UK corridors to support not only UK companies, but also China companies to come across their difficulties in their trading journey. So that's how we started. But when we started, we decided to use a gradual approach rather than to go to China immediately. We set up our office, not only the office, but we set up like our sales team in UK, in European countries, and to try our product to see whether the client base are familiar with type of product, whether there is a need in the markets. That's how we started our journey.
Great. Is that the similar experience, William? Having a bit of base with a bit of a sort of data set research first, with a bit of foundation from the European side, then rolling it out to Asia. What's your experience there?
Yes, Raymond, firstly, thanks very much for asking me to speak today, and congratulations to you and the DIT for an excellent guidebook. I wish I had access to something like that 12 or 13 years ago. For those of you who don't know FNZ, we're a wealth management platform supplying financial institutions, around about 700 billion US on the platform. And we have had a presence in China for around about 6 years plus, both here in Hong Kong as well as in Shanghai, where we have a world-class development center with around about 150 people. So we're probably one of the larger UK companies in China. Raymond, perhaps I could just share some sort of more practical experiences which I've sort of gained over sort of the years I've been here. And I think one of the first challenges is really around, and I'm talking about mainland China as distinct from Hong Kong, which I think we'll talk about later, is really the the regulation and sort of the interpretation of that, and now the pace of change, which is very exciting. It's not a matter of whether or not China's opening, but it's really, you know, how fast. So that's always been a challenge, and sort of trying to really interpret the guidelines and rules. And I think another one, and that's been alluded to in terms of research, is that, you know, China clearly leads the world in many technology areas, and has the advantage of sheer size. So I think it's absolutely key that one takes time to listen and understand the opportunities and the pain points with potential clients before really trying to sell them something. And I think another point is relationships, and important of really getting to the decision makers quickly. And that's where Steve and the DIT team, and I'm sure yourselves at Deloitte can assist with. But, you know, really what's known as Guanxi out here connections, that's very important. And that's probably over the time I've been here become more important in terms of some of the centralization of decisions at financial institutions within China. And that has a context, I think, also for those who are looking to open in Hong Kong or do business with Chinese financial institutions globally. And I think, so a last point, if I may, is obviously it's key to, you know, set up locally, various structures obviously for doing that, but to think locally and to understand the key market differences and cultures and the way they behave. But I think at the same time it's important to remember that you know, the Chinese financial institutions are looking, and the authorities looking to modernize the industry and improve its quality. And really seeking to combine that best of East and West, as it were, in terms, for example, of best practices. So I think it's, you know, it's important to partner with in China, but don't go perhaps too local. There's a very strong marriage between you know, both parties in terms of the expertise. So I think that's just, if I may, Raymond, just sort of insert those as some of the experiences I've sort of gained, I said, over quite a number of years now.
Sure, William. Of course, 13 years of experience with crystallizing 4 points. I think that's that gives a lot of weight to the 4 points. But just a reminder to the audience, the Q&A channel is open. Please feel free to put in any questions you may want to ask into the panels, and I will pass on. I just want to sort of pick up the regulatory point, William. The reason being is that we have been hearing it recursively over the course of our 10 interviews with UK FinTechs. And on that, we have 2 distinctive lawyers with explanatory track record on advising sort of FinTechs and startups. And maybe on the regulatory side, Jingyuan, do you want to give a bit of overview in terms of the supervisory guidance on sort of you know, financial service, and in particular, I think from experience, data privacy is a key focus. Yeah, hand over to you, Jingyuan. Oh, you're on mute, Jingyuan.
Hello, thank you, Raymond. Can you hear me okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jingyuan. Great pleasure to speak to you all today. Very briefly, I'm a partner of Simmons. I am a technology lawyer by way of background. Simmons has been focused on FinTech services through our global offices, including our 4 offices in China. And therefore, I look after the technology practice of our China offices. In response to Raymond's question just now, I think 2 points to note in particular. One, the first one is data privacy, which has attracted a lot of attention and concerns in recent years, in particular for foreign players. This guidebook has outlined the fundamental data privacy requirements set out under the Chinese cybersecurity law and civil code, which is very useful. In addition, what I would like to mention here briefly is the trend. It is notable that the Chinese data privacy legislations are actively evolving, and therefore we have been recommending our clients to closely monitor the progress. Very notably, I think there were 2 draft legislations which came out last year and expected to be coming out in the next year or so, now subject to the 2nd and 3rd reading. And those legislations will, together with the current existing cybersecurity law, will form the 3 very important, most important triangle legislations setting out the basic data privacy framework in China. In other words, the current status is quickly evolving, and you should watch out the trend for next step. The second point in relation to data privacy is now, given the draft legislations have came out to the market seeking public comments, so we can see what the legislators are thinking about to bring the next piece of Chinese data privacy legislations to. For example, you can see clearly that the draft Chinese data protection law has taken a lot of reference from GDPR. So it is not so surprising for those players which are subject to GDPR already. It has provided for example, extraterritorial effect. It provides for more lawful basis for data collection and processing, and appointment of DPO, risk assessment equivalent to DPIA and the GDPR. So those are the concepts which I presume will be relatively familiar to you guys. One thing in particular notable, which is not so familiar to the other international players, is the topic around cross-border data transfer. So in China, currently, one thing which is different from many other countries is that for cross-border data transfer, fundamentally, it is very likely to be subject to security assessment. I'm not saying you cannot transfer personal data from China to be outside of China, but depending on circumstances, depending on what the data in question, depending on what you are, what is the relevant entity, what is the data collecting body, and et cetera, and the volume of data involved, etc. And then very likely the implication will be either you have to do security assessment. The security assessment maybe has to be done by the relevant regulator, or has to be done by yourself as the data collecting body, or you can't transfer that at all. It's not, there's no sort of one cutting line applying to all of the circumstances. So that is one thing, very, very notable issue and the Chinese data privacy law, in particular in relatively sensitive sectors such as financial sector. In relation to data, the final point, if I may, is that in addition to the legislations I just mentioned, there are many other sectorial rules which are still evolving. So we expect when the two legislations, key legislations I just mentioned, when they are hopefully finalized in the next year or two, there will be a bunch of other sectorial rules, most likely in financial sector as well, coming out in the next couple of years. And those will be very worth paying attention to as well, because they may set out more specific requirements to financial related entities. For example, we saw a new rule coming out, I think late last year, which basically says that for data breach, the relevant body has to report to the regulator within 72 hours. And that is in line with GDPR actually, but that is nowhere in other sectorial rules and the Chinese law currently. So in other words, financial sector has been a relatively sensitive sector in the data privacy context as well. So that is very roughly about data privacy. Very happy to take more questions in a minute. Another aspect which I recommend companies to pay attention to is the licensing requirements. As you know that financial and technology, those are the two areas which are subject to relatively heavier Chinese regulatory supervision over the past many years. Understanding the complex licensing requirements is a challenge, but in addition to that, I also need to point out that even if some of the licenses are open to application by foreign players, it is also worthwhile to check. As a matter of fact, how many foreign related players have actually successfully applied for that licenses. I mean, you need to check how many licenses were granted in the past year or so to understand the regulators' attitude on that very specific licensing grants very recently, because it keeps changing subject to many factors. So in addition to the legal requirements, also need to watch out the reality, the actual regulators' attitudes towards a very specific licensing grant is another note I want to make here. That's very briefly from me. Thank you, Raymond. Back to you.
Thanks, Jingyuan. So it actually raised on lots of questions in the Q&A channel already, because I think this is very relevant live to many UK fintechs. The data constraints, the regulatory supervision guidance, the licensing requirements are all in a way together shaping the business entry strategies. From that perspective, Lily, maybe you can give a sort of bit of flavor from your experience observing the international fintechs entering China. What are the most effective strategies that UK fintechs should be sort of taking it forward in their way entering China?
Okay, thank you, Raymond. As the other panelists has already commented, there are generally three options for a UK fintech company to enter China. These options include first, setting up a subsidiary directly in China, which is commonly referred to as WFOE setup. This approach has already been adopted by established financial groups such as SSBC, which established a fintech subsidiary in China. Some other companies also establish WFOEs in China, particularly when a financial license is not required. The second approach is M&A acquisition. As Xingyuan just mentioned, in some financial sectors, you may need license to operate. So a typical example in this sector is a payment license. And a typical case is a PayPal case. Actually, PayPal acquired a Chinese company holding the third-party payment license via two successive equity acquisitions. And it became the first foreign payment company holding the payment license in China. So acquisition could be a way for a UK fintech to enter into China, particularly where a financial license or other licenses are required. And third one is technology cooperation. And such cooperation includes contractual cooperations, whereby services or products from a fintech company can be sold to a Chinese financial institution. Or a UK fintech can also cooperate with a Chinese fintech company, or even a joint venture between a UK fintech company and a Chinese fintech company can be formed. And you may find more details in section 2 of the Guidebook regarding the entry strategies. Back to you.
Cool, thanks, Lily. So these are all sort of practical, what you have seen being successful. But I would like to turn to the two practitioners, Chi and William. Which approach you have been taken in entering China in a way? Maybe start from Chi. I know that by fact you are discussing with local Chinese partners in applying the license. This is going live. What's your experience there?
Yes, actually, as Lily and Jingyuan mentioned, there are 3 ways to go to China markets. Actually, I think eBay take a partnership way to go to the Chinese markets. So the first step is actually we set up a Hong Kong office, use Hong Kong as a springboard, because Hong Kong is very close to mainland China. So some Chinese company, they have an office in Hong Kong, and also Hong Kong has a close relationship to UK as well. So after we found out the Hong Kong office can be a very good springboard for us, and then we talk with a few payments company, because one of our important business is payment, international payment as well. But to get a payment license in China, it takes very long time and it's also very expensive. So we talk with a few payment partners, and also eventually we found out one partner particular is very suitable for eBay's business model. And then according to very long journey talking, discussing with compliance team, with lawyer, and then decided we send the contract. So because of this partnership, actually we can use their license to do business in China, and then we set up a Shanghai office. Just before the pandemic, everything is ready, but now it seems like it's a little bit slowed down. But for the license and also the business, I think it's quite ready. When everything is ready, we start to do our business in China. So that's how it works.
Very good. And William, I guess you sort of had the unique experience from starting from Hong Kong to the mainland Hainan, maybe then to the Shanghai, then potentially looking at the Greater Bay Area. You must have a bit of consideration in terms of your journey and your experience.
Sure, and I think yes, Raymond. I think what Lily and you have said to really summarize up extremely well. I think the only point I would make is my observations from what's going on in the financial sector and looking at behaviors in terms of market entry. I mean, I think that we've homed in also really three routes. One, which is what I call competition, which is direct entry, which might be a WOFE, which is probably more suitable than a rep office, acquisition or something, or taking a stake, or some form of partnership, whether that's with financial institutions or other, domestic Chinese fintech companies. But I think it's what a lot of people are doing is you've also got to enter in a controlled way. I don't think any of those are mutually exclusive. So most financial institutions are sort of backing sort of multiple horses, as it were, and also different geographic sort of plays as well around China, given its sheer size and diversity. And I think sort of one last point, if I may, is that I think probably I don't know who's listening, but I think extensively fintech companies. I think that from my experience, that a WOFE would wholly foreign enterprise would suffice for most of the companies who are providing systems to financial institutions, and I think there is a subset, obviously, depending on the services, whether they're payments and other, which might require some form of regulation, or whether in the financial industry you're providing what's called critical information systems. But I think, broadly speaking, the regulatory requirements are relatively friendly. It's more about the for fintechs, it's more about how you actually get the customers and what route you take to achieve that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We got a few interesting questions I will share with the panelists. The first one is around the cities, which cities they should be prioritizing in sort of entering China. Is that Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, Hong Kong? I think that is thought to connect to the sort of free trade zone that we have discussed extensively in the guidebook. Lily, do you want to give a bit more, there are 11 free trade zones in China, but give a bit of overview.
Okay. I think I can take this question first. Regarding FinTech hubs in China, according to various rankings, I think Beijing ranked #1 all over China. And the second one is typically Shanghai, and then is Shenzhen and Hangzhou. In these cities, you may find a lot of similar industries, and also established ecosystem and supported policies. Especially as Raymond mentioned just now, there are some free trade zones also established in these key FinTech hub cities, and in this in this PFTZ, meaning the free trade zones, and also the FinTech pilot zones, you may find a lot of sandbox policies, which are regulatory innovations to remove certain restrictions when regulating innovative financial activities. These areas may be considered for your entry into China. Of course, you may also consider other cities, particularly where you can find your clients, or where you can find other Chinese companies for a partnership or for a cooperation. That's my answer. Back to you, Raymond.
Thanks, Lily. There's another one for for our lawyer, Jingyuan, around the data. It's coming right hot here. The question is, are there any cross-border initiatives to digitizing certain process between UK and China sandboxes for data exchange? I guess this draws upon the latest development in sort of innovative data exchange channels that you might be seeing. Yeah.
Sure. I'm afraid the answer is not yet at this very moment. However, the thing I didn't mention just now is that in the Bay Area covers Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Macau, and the Canton region. And Bay Area has been designed by the government to become a tech hub in the region and also globally, where we see a lot of very innovative policies around tech, around data, around financial sector. And I see the PBOC, Bank of China, and the other regulators have already started talking about what are the more cutting-edge policies we can grant in this region from both a domestic perspective and also international bilateral perspective. So we keep monitoring that, although not yet to this very specific answer. And in addition, if I can add my observation to the very first question in relation to which city to choose, I absolutely agree with what Lily just said. Just want to add, because I myself currently based in Shenzhen, and I have been working in Shanghai, Beijing, London, and then come back to Hong Kong and now Shenzhen. So I do have a personal preference about the Shenzhen, again, being one leading city in the region. I think Shenzhen and Shanghai, those are the relatively more, how to say, when people think about FinTech, those are the sort of the natural destination when talking about where to set up entity in China. And both Shenzhen and Shanghai, they have free trade zones. I think they have slightly different features. For the Shenzhen one, the feature is to link the Shenzhen with Hong Kong and the Bay Area. In other words, the central government is very keen to keep Hong Kong as a sort of the global financial center. But how to link the resources, the international players in Hong Kong, to be more connected with the mainland market, and Bay Area has been chosen as a place for that. That means there will be lots of relaxation policies between fund flows, between data transfer, between other commercial activities between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And that would be beneficial to international players if they have an operating entity in Hong Kong already, not a shell one, but a real operating one. And Hong Kong, again, has other tax beneficial treatments with mainland, among other factors to be considered. So that is sort of the direction to think about having Shenzhen as the sort of the place for you to step into China market. And Shanghai has other features. So just to add a flavor on that question as well. Back to you, Raymond. Thank you.
Thanks. Actually, you mentioned the two very interesting cities that are very close to me. I was born in Shanghai, and I studied also in Shenzhen for quite a while. And talking about you mentioned the Greater Bay Area, that's a huge and interesting topic. Just for the audience, in case you don't know what is Greater Bay Area, it is an area with a GDP of Canada and population of UK. The Chinese government has advocated quite a lot of innovative and policies to invite international cooperation. William, I believe that's also your sort of a major bet for the next BD side. Do you want to give a bit of flavor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, GBA, Greater Bay Area is very much talk of town here in Hong Kong, and people are very excited about it. And we sort of focused earlier on the market entry strategies, into the mainland. But Hong Kong, of course, does provide is China, and does provide also that familiarity with its language as well as rule of law in the international financial centre. So, I mean, I think just building on what's been said, one of the key developments in the financial space is the the Wealth Connect scheme, which mirrors what's been introduced between the Shanghai Shenzhen exchanges and mainland, and extending that to a broad range of wealth products for the retail market rather than some of these other institutional schemes. And that is really very exciting indeed. And it is a pilot which will then go nationwide. So I think sort of, just in the interest of time, for those who are sort of fintech firms or financial firms here today in the UK, I think it does present some great opportunities, and in particular for those who've got a presence in Hong Kong, say fund houses, initially a bank-to-bank model, but to sell product into the mainland. And there are definitely opportunities as well for fintech companies to partner with financial institutions as well, and help them, particularly as they go global. And that's across a broad range of not just in wealth, but regtech and other areas. So it's a very, very exciting initiative indeed, and one which should be paid attention to. And we're finding that, looking forward to the further developments there this year.
And Chi, I believe you are sizing it up there as well. In Hong Kong, similar, using Hong Kong as a springboard, as you mentioned, and rolling out into China mainland market.
Yes, we use Hong Kong as a springboard as well. What I like Hong Kong is actually Hong Kong is because one of our business is about payments. So Hong Kong, you can get money out of China freely and go into the China freely, and you have freedom to do international trade as well. So that's a reason as a business, I mean, as a fintech in UK, and there are a lot of talents there as well. They can speak very good language. There are a lot of good lawyers there. So we hire a lawyer locally. They help us to apply for a license, I mean, payment license in Hong Kong. So that's really helped us a lot. And also, you know, like to set up a new business, set up a new entity, it's most important thing is you have to get to persuade the decision maker. So I think Hong Kong, our decision maker based in London, so they are very familiar with Hong Kong. So that's the reason we use Hong Kong as our first step to go to China.
Great. Well, thanks, Chi. Cautious of time, we still got at least 10 questions from what I'm seeing. But thanks for the very warm discussions from the panel and great insights. Again, I just want to advocate last time the guidebook, which we will share shortly in a downloadable link by email. Please, if you are interested to know a bit more, there are extensive details and practical guidance to help you. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to either DIT or Deloitte. We are more than happy to help. With that, Stephen, shall I hand over back to you to conclude today's webinar?
Thank you very much, Raymond. And thank you once again to all of the participants today, from the panelists to Charlotte and Louise, and obviously Peter as well. From my perspective, being sat here in Shanghai, I'm clearly biased on the question as to where you should set up and enter. I think Shanghai is a brilliant place, but as I said, I'm biased. It's hugely encouraging from my perspective that we have so many participants joining today. I think we had almost 100 at the peak, and also incredibly encouraging that there is such interest, and some of the questions that are being asked as well are very detailed and very thought out as well. So from our perspective, being slightly mercenary on the DIT side, it is all brilliant to see, and thank you everyone for joining. The insights as well, particularly shared by the panelists, I thought were very useful as well, from the initial navigating of regulations to understanding market dynamics, through to how you should think about setting up your business over in China, what the steps are you should take, and then how you should go about setting up your business, and then the business development plans as well, along with making sure that you're protected as a business. All incredibly valuable information and insight, and as Raymond said, are very much covered in the guidebook itself. I will probably just wrap up there with, once again, please do feel free to get in touch with us. The contacts of the team are in the guidebook. We would be more than happy to have a conversation and to try and answer any of the questions that you may have. regarding the Chinese market and opportunities over here. And we stand ready to help support your China entry. And I would just like to end by once again thanking everyone for joining today and the Deloitte team for working so hard to pull the guidebook together. I know Raymond in particular has done a huge amount of work, and based on the times he was responding to WeChats was very much burning the midnight oil in the UK. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to all of the panelists and speakers.
Thank you all.